test you on is the radial head adjustment. And so there's a couple different radial head adjustments. So we take for all of them, it's for a posterior radial head. The question is it fixated in pronation or supination? They're all going to be the same. They're both going to be the same as far as setup. I take a P to A tissue pull right on the radial head. Of course, that's a structure you define with the tip of one finger. My fingers are on the anterior aspect of the ulna, so that when I do this, that's going to bring the radial head anteriorly. And then I test them in supination, pushing from A to P and a little bit of lateral or medial, and test them in pronation, pushing from A to P and a little bit of lateral medial. And if it's fixated, I take it in the position of fixated and I simply thrust from A to P, P to A, not just P to A, because that hyperextends the elbow, but I also have a lateral, a lateral to medial direction of force as well. So the thrust is like this. It's not like this, it's like this. And that's what allows me to get a good force on the radial head without hyperextending the elbow. Got it? Just do it in the position of fixation. Then we learn, have you stand up for this one. Very nice. And then why don't you stand over here a little bit so people can see just a little better. Good. And so now, depending on supination or pronation, I can contact it with a thumb and contact the double thumb contact, and then I simply thrust from P to A and S to I. That's right. So I'm pulling down this way. And that's particularly valuable for the jammed joint. And so that's when I had a Fuchs injury, but it ain't fractured. You got to make sure it's not fractured before you go thrusting on it. That's kind of important. Because you don't want to take a non-displaced fracture and make a displaced fracture. And I just keep reminding everybody about my student, whose father was my student, who fractured his scaphoid. It was negative on x-ray. His employer adjusted it, and that was the end of his career. We have wrist. So we did AP glide. A couple ways of doing this, but this is a nice simple one. And we do this for each different row. So I'm going to grasp with my thumb and index finger the radius and ulnar styloids. And I'm going to grasp the proximal row with my index and thumb. And I simply distract A to P and thrust, and distract A to P and thrust. And I simply slide distal. So now I'm on the distal row and the proximal row. Stress and thrust, stress and thrust. And now I'm on the proximal row and the metacarpals. Stress and thrust, stress and thrust. Notice for each of these, my elbows are locked straight. That really gives me control and force. Doing it like this, you have much less control and much less force. Elbows locked straight. I'm using my shoulders to adjust, not my arms to adjust.
So is that a shearing kind of motion, or are you just using one? Okay.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So you're doing both. Exactly right. Let's see. We did the posterior lunate, so you're going to know that you're on the lunate. So remember, from the capitate, it's proximal and slightly ulnarward. I cover it with the thumb. I'm going to place my middle phalanx. This is good to see right there. Middle phalanx on adjacent bones. Again, it doesn't matter which thumb's on top. And I'm not going to hyperextend, just a little bit of extension, and I stress and thrust from A to P. And then for the anterior capitate, again, we find the capitate posteriorly. Remember, that's the finger you need to find the capitate. Now I'm in trouble, aren't I? So I find the capitate, and so now I'm going to palpate anteriorly, and I distract. So now I'm creating an A to P stress until I feel it. Right at that point, when I push on the anterior part, I can feel it posteriorly. Now I know that's right on the capitate. I cover it with another index finger. I stabilize adjacent carpal bones with my thumb. This one we want good distraction, so it leans back for me, and I thrust, and I move too. I don't hyperflex, just a little bit of flexion with the thrust. It's moving around all over the place. Don't adjust unstable joints. Triangular fiber cartilage. Shake his hand. I'm going to place my finger under the pisiform. I distract, stabilize the forearm, and simply stress and thrust into this motion here. So I'm pulling it in distraction. Dr. Yasami has a probably do anything, but that's going to end next time.
For the fibrocartilage, where's the other hand?
Stabilizes the forearm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Remember that you don't want them in a neutral position. You need to have the wrist extended for this to create that range. Otherwise, the scaphoid just jams against the radius. So you need to have them extended for that. And then finally, let's have you stand up for this one. We have the proximal first metacarpal. Thumb is on the base of the metacarpal. And I'm not going to hyperextend him. I'm going to keep it in a neutral position. I cover it with my other thumb. He leans up straight, and I simply stress down. So my forearm is stretching directly along, parallel to his forearm, creating a distraction force. That's it.